For 300 years, humanity had lived among the stars as a forgotten species. The great powers of the galaxy looked at Earth and its small collection of colonies the way a lion might look at an ant. There was no fear, no respect, and certainly no concern. Humans were tolerated because they were harmless. They were allowed to exist because they posed no threat to anyone. The Galactic Concord was ruled by 12 ancient species who had mastered space travel long before humans learned to make fire. These elder races controlled vast empires spanning thousands of star systems. They commanded fleets numbering in the tens of thousands. Their technology was so advanced that human scientists could barely understand the basic principles behind it. And they had decided, centuries ago, that humanity would never amount to anything significant. Admiral John Carter had served in the United Earth Navy for 40 years. He was 62 years old, with gray hair and tired eyes that had seen too much. His entire career had been spent commanding what most humans privately called the show fleet. These were ships designed to look impressive during diplomatic visits and joint exercises with alien powers. They were meant to give the illusion that humanity had a real military presence in the galaxy. But everyone knew the truth. If any of the elder races decided to attack, humanity would fall within days. Carter stood on the bridge of the carrier Resolute, watching a diplomatic convoy pass through the Velar system. His ship was one of the largest in the human fleet, carrying a crew of 3,000 and enough fighters to make a decent showing in a small skirmish. Against the Dominion or the Republic, it would last perhaps 20 minutes before being reduced to floating debris. Lieutenant Wright, his communications officer, looked up from his console with concern on his face. He was a young man, barely 30, who still believed that humanity might one day earn respect through peaceful cooperation with the elder races. Carter had believed the same thing once, a long time ago. "Admiral, we are receiving a priority transmission from Secretary Bell," Wright announced. "It is marked urgent and encrypted at the highest level." Carter felt his stomach tighten. Bell was the Secretary of Unified Earth Command, the civilian leader responsible for all military operations across human space. A priority message from her office meant something had gone terribly wrong. He walked to his private quarters at the back of the bridge and closed the door behind him. The room was small and Spartan, containing only a desk, a chair, and a screen for private communications. He sat down and accepted the encrypted call. Bell appeared on screen. She was a woman in her late 50s, with sharp features and silver hair cut short in a practical style. She had served as secretary for 12 years, guiding humanity through countless diplomatic crises with the elder races. Carter had never seen her look so serious. "John, we have a situation," she said without any greeting. "The Dominion has issued an ultimatum. They are demanding that we surrender all colonies beyond the boundary within 30 standard days. If we refuse, they will take them by force." Carter leaned back in his chair, processing the information. The boundary marked the edge of what the Concord officially recognized as human territory. Beyond it lay 7 colony worlds with a combined population of nearly 10 billion people. They had been eyeing those worlds for decades, but the Concord's rules had prevented direct action. "They are calling our bluff," Carter said quietly. "They know the Concord will not intervene, and they think we cannot defend ourselves." "That is exactly what they think," Bell replied. "And based on our official military strength, they are absolutely correct. Our entire Navy could not hold a single one of those colonies against an assault fleet." Carter nodded slowly. He understood the mathematics of the situation. They commanded over 50,000 warships, each one more powerful than anything in the human fleet. They could send a fraction of their forces and still overwhelm every ship humanity possessed. "So what do we do?" he asked. "Evacuate the colonies, surrender them peacefully, and hope to treat our people well?" Bell allowed herself a thin smile, the first hint of emotion she had shown since the conversation began. "No, John, we do something else entirely. something that has been planned for a very long time. She paused, seeming to weigh her next words carefully. You are being reassigned, effective immediately. Report to Station Erebus in the Void Sector. Your new orders will be waiting for you there. Carter frowned. He had never heard of Station Erebus, and the Void Sector was one of the most remote regions of space humanity had ever explored. It was a vast stretch of empty darkness between the spiral arms of the galaxy, containing no stars, no planets, and no reason for anyone to go there. "What is Station Erebus?" he asked. "I have served in the Navy for 4 decades and I have never heard that name." Bell's smile widened slightly. "That is because it has been classified at the highest possible level since before you were born. Only a handful of people in the entire government know it exists." She leaned forward, her eyes intense. "John, have you ever heard rumors about the Titans?" Carter's breath caught in his throat. The Titans were a legend among senior naval officers, a story told in whispers during late nights and private gatherings. They were supposed to be humanity's secret weapon, a fleet of impossibly large warships hidden somewhere in the depths of space. Most officers dismissed the stories as wishful thinking, a comforting fantasy that made the reality of human weakness easier to bear. "I have heard the stories," Carter admitted. "I always assumed they were just myths, something to make us feel better about our situation." "They are not myths," Bell said simply. "The Titans are real, John. They have been real for 250 years, and it is time to wake them up." Carter sat in stunned silence, unable to find words. His entire understanding of humanity's position in the galaxy was shifting beneath him like sand in a storm. "Go to Station Erebus," Bell continued. "See the truth for yourself, and then prepare to do what no human has ever done before." She paused, her expression hardening with determination. "We are going to show the galaxy what humanity is really capable of." The screen went dark, leaving Carter alone with his thoughts. Outside his window, the stars continued their eternal dance, indifferent to the chaos unfolding among the tiny creatures who dared to travel between them. Somewhere out there, hidden in the darkest corner of space, humanity's greatest secret waited to be revealed. Carter stood up and straightened his uniform. Whatever was waiting for him at Station Erebus, he knew that nothing would ever be the same again. The galaxy thought it knew everything about humanity. The galaxy was wrong. The journey to the Void Sector took 14 days. Admiral John Carter traveled alone in a small transport ship, following coordinates that led him farther from civilization than any official mission had ever taken him. The stars grew sparse, then disappeared entirely, leaving nothing but endless darkness in every direction. Carter had spent his entire life among the stars, but he had never experienced true emptiness like this. There were no navigation beacons, no passing ships, no distant suns to provide comfort. He was flying through a region of space that most species avoided simply because there was nothing there worth finding. On the 15th day, his sensors detected something ahead. At first, he thought it was a glitch in his equipment. The reading suggested a structure larger than most moons, floating in the absolute darkness of the void. But when he looked through his viewport, he saw only black emptiness. Then the emptiness spoke to him. "Unidentified vessel, you are entering restricted space," a calm female voice announced over his communications system. "Transmit authorization codes immediately or you will be destroyed." Carter entered the codes that Secretary Bell had given him. There was a moment of silence, and then the voice returned with a warmer tone. "Authorization confirmed. Welcome to Station Erebus, Admiral Carter. Please follow the guidance beacon to Docking Bay 7. A small light appeared in the darkness ahead, blinking steadily. Carter adjusted his course to follow it, and as he drew closer, something remarkable happened. The emptiness in front of him began to shimmer and dissolve, revealing a structure so massive that his mind struggled to comprehend it. Station Erebus was not just a military base. It was a small world unto itself, a complex of interconnected platforms and habitats stretching across hundreds of kilometers. Lights glittered across its surface like stars, and Carter could see thousands of smaller vessels moving between its various sections. The entire station had been hidden behind some kind of holographic shroud, invisible to any sensors or observers who might accidentally wander into the void. Carter docked his ship and stepped out into a hangar bay larger than most cities he had visited. Crews of technicians moved with purpose around him, working on equipment he did not recognize. The technology here was decades ahead of anything he had seen in the regular fleet. A woman approached him with confident strides. She wore a uniform similar to his own, but with insignia he had never encountered. Her name tag identified her as Commander Lisa Monroe. "Admiral Carter, welcome to Erebus," she said, extending her hand. "I will be serving as your executive officer aboard the Goliath." Carter shook her hand, still trying to process everything around him. "The Goliath, that is one of them, one of the Titans." Monroe smiled slightly. "The first of 7, sir. Please follow me. There is much you need to see." She led him through corridors that seemed to stretch on forever. They passed laboratories filled with scientists working on projects Carter could not begin to understand. They walked through training facilities, where soldiers practiced combat techniques that looked more like science fiction than military protocol. Everything here had been designed with a purpose that went far beyond normal military operations. "How long has this place existed?" Carter asked as they walked. "Station Erebus was established 250 years ago," Monroe explained. "It was humanity's response to a simple truth that our leaders understood from the moment we made first contact with the elder races. The galaxy does not respect peace or diplomacy. It respects power, and we had none." She stopped at a sealed door and entered a long code into the security panel. "Our ancestors realized that we could never compete with the elder races using conventional methods. Their fleets were too large, their technology too advanced, so they decided to think on a completely different scale." The door slid open, revealing an observation deck with a massive window looking out into the void. Carter stepped forward and felt his heart stop beating. Before him, suspended in the darkness like sleeping giants, were 7 warships unlike anything he had ever imagined. Each one was the size of a small planet, stretching across thousands of kilometers from bow to stern. Their hulls were covered with weapon systems that comprehension. Energy collectors the size of continents gathered power from sources Carter could not identify. Shield generators capable of withstanding forces that would crack worlds in half hummed quietly in standby mode. The Titans were real, and they were magnificent. "My God," Carter whispered, "how is this possible?" Monroe joined him at the window, her voice filled with quiet pride. Every budget discrepancy in the United Earth government for the past 2.5 centuries fed into this project. Every missing shipment of rare minerals came here. Every scientist who supposedly retired early actually came to work at Erebus. Millions of people across multiple generations dedicated their lives to building these ships in absolute secrecy. Carter stared at the impossible fleet, trying to calculate the resources required to create such monsters. "The Concord monitors all major construction projects. How did we hide this from their sensors?" "The void sector is dead space," Monroe replied. "No stars, no planets, nothing of value. The elder races have never bothered to explore it. We built our own infrastructure from scratch, using materials harvested from rogue asteroids and transported in small shipments that never attracted attention. It took centuries, but we did it." She handed him a data pad containing the specifications for the lead ship, the Goliath. Carter read through the information with growing amazement. The vessel carried enough firepower to glass entire continents from orbit. Its shields could withstand the concentrated fire of 1,000 conventional warships. Its crew numbered over 2 million, recruited from every nation on Earth under cover of various civilian programs. "To think they are dealing with a primitive species," Monroe said. They think they can threaten our colonies without consequence. They have no idea what is coming." Carter looked up from the data pad, meeting her eyes. "Why now? Why reveal the Titans after keeping them secret for so long?" "Because the moment has finally come," Monroe replied. "Humanity has been waiting for this day for 300 years. We smiled at the elder races and pretended to be weak. We endured their contempt and their mockery. We let them believe we were nothing. And all that time, we were preparing for the day when someone would finally push us too far." She gestured toward the massive ships floating silently in the void. "They made their choice. Now they will face the consequences. Signal all vessels, Admiral. Begin launch preparations." Her voice hardened with resolve. "It is time the galaxy learned the truth about humanity." Carter looked at the Titans one more time, feeling a strange mixture of fear and hope rising in his chest. Humanity had been hiding in the shadows for 3 centuries. Now the shadows were about to fight back. Grand Admiral of the Dominion stood on the command bridge of his flagship, the Crushing Tide. His compound eyes surveyed the tactical display with satisfaction as his armada dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the system. 12,000 warships followed his command, each one a weapon of destruction that had conquered dozens of worlds across the galaxy. The planet below was called New Haven, home to 3 billion humans who would soon learn the meaning of supremacy. The colony had been established 80 years ago on a world rich in rare minerals and fertile land. The conquered's rules had protected it from conquest, but those rules meant nothing when no one was willing to enforce them. Mandibles clicked together in anticipation. This would be the easiest victory of his long career. The humans had no real military to speak of. Their pathetic fleet would crumble before the might of the Dominion, and then the real work of occupation could begin. "Grand Admiral," his censor officer reported, "the humans have deployed their defense fleet, 200 vessels holding position near the 4th planet." Let out a sound that passed for laughter among his species. 200 ships against 12,000. The humans were either brave beyond reason or stupid beyond measure. Perhaps both. "Open a channel to their commander," he ordered. "I want them to hear what is coming before they die." The flickered and displayed a human female in a crisp military uniform. Her face was calm, almost serene, as if she was not staring at the largest invasion fleet ever assembled against her species. She identified herself as Admiral Victoria Lane, commander of Earth's 7th Fleet. "Grand Admiral," she said in a pleasant voice, "you have entered human space with hostile intent. I am offering you one opportunity to withdraw your forces peacefully. I suggest you take it." The bridge erupted in chittering laughter from every officer present. Leaned forward in his command chair, his massive body casting shadows across the floor. "You threaten me, human?" he asked with amusement. "You stand with 200 ships against 12,000 and you dare to offer me terms. Your arrogance is remarkable, even for your pathetic species." Admiral Lane smiled, and something about that smile made confidence waver for just a moment. It was the smile of someone who knew a secret, someone who held cards that had not yet been revealed. "Who said anything about 200 ships?" she asked softly. Behind the human fleet, space itself began to tear apart. 7 massive rifts opened in the fabric of reality, each one larger than a gas giant, blazing with energies that made sensors scream warnings. And through those rifts came something that the Grand Admiral's mind refused to accept. The Titans emerged from the void. The first ship alone was larger than any moon had ever conquered. It stretched across thousands of kilometers, blocking out the stars behind it like a rising wall of metal and destruction. Its hull bristled with weapons systems that radiated power signatures his equipment could not measure. And behind it came 6 more, each one equally massive, equally impossible, equally terrifying. Sensor officer made a sound that no warrior should ever make. It was a scream of pure primal fear, torn from his throat by the sight of something his instincts recognized as an absolute predator. "Grand Admiral," the officer said in a shaking voice, "those vessels are planet-sized. Our sensors cannot calculate their weapon systems. We have nothing that can even scratch their shields." The entire bridge fell silent. 12,000 ships that had seemed so overwhelming moments ago now looked like insects floating before gods. The Armada, the pride of the Dominion, was suddenly and completely insignificant. Admiral Lane's face vanished from the screen, replaced by a human male with gray hair and calm eyes. He wore an admiral's uniform with insignia that did not recognize. "Grand Admiral," the human said, "I am John Carter of the United Earth Titan Fleet. You have 30 seconds to order a complete withdrawal from this system. If your ships remain after that time, we will demonstrate exactly why humanity should never have been underestimated." Stared at the screen, then at the impossible ships that now dominated the tactical display. His entire understanding of the galaxy was crumbling around him. For 300 years, they had dismissed humans as weaklings. For 300 years, they had mocked and threatened and bullied this seemingly helpless species. And all that time, humanity had been building these monsters in secret. "Grand Admiral," his tactical officer said urgently, "what are your orders?" Watched as the lead Titan's weapon systems began to glow with building energy. Each cannon on that ship was larger than his entire flagship. A single shot would vaporize hundreds of his vessels instantly. His fleet, his career, his very life hung on the decision he made in the next few seconds. He had been a warrior for over a century. He had conquered worlds and crushed rebellions without mercy, but he was not a fool. Fighting these ships would not be war, it would be suicide. "All vessels," he ordered, his voice hollow and defeated. "Full retreat, immediately. Do not stop until we have cleared human space entirely." The Armada turned and fled. 12,000 warships that had come to conquer instead ran like frightened animals from a predator they could not hope to match. In the space of minutes, the greatest invasion force the Dominion had ever assembled against a single species scattered into faster-than-light travel, desperate to escape the terrible shadow of humanity's secret fleet. On the bridge of the Goliath, Commander Lisa Monroe watched the enemy retreat with quiet satisfaction. Around her, 2 million crew members began to cheer, celebrating a victory won without firing a single shot. Admiral Carter remained silent, his eyes fixed on the fleeing ships. He understood that this moment would change everything. Word of what happened here would spread across the galaxy within hours. Every species that had ever looked down on humanity would soon learn the truth. The news of the retreat spread across the galaxy like wildfire burning through dry grass. Within hours, every major news network was broadcasting footage captured by the fleeing Armada. The images showed ships that belief, vessels so large that they made the mightiest warships of the elder races look like toys. Billions of beings across thousands of worlds watched in stunned silence as their understanding of galactic power shifted forever. The Galactic Concord called an emergency session within 2 days of the incident. For the first time in 3 centuries, representatives from all 12 ruling species gathered to discuss a single topic. The Great Council chamber on the neutral world of Nexus Prime was filled to capacity, as ambassadors and officials took their seats with expressions of shock and concern. High Counselor of the Republic called the assembly to order. His bioluminescent skin flickered with agitation as he addressed the gathered representatives. They were one of the oldest and most powerful species in the Concord, known for their calm diplomacy and measured responses. Today showed neither quality. "The humans have deceived us all," he declared, his voice echoing through the chamber. "For 300 years they pretended to be weak and harmless. They allowed us to believe they posed no threat to anyone. And all that time, they were building weapons capable of destroying entire civilizations. This deception cannot be tolerated. This threat must be addressed." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the assembly. The representatives stood and demanded immediate sanctions against humanity. The Empire called for the formation of a joint military force to neutralize the Titan fleet. Even species that had traditionally been friendly toward humans expressed concerns about the sudden shift in power. Ambassador Gary stood alone at the human delegation's podium, facing the fury of 12 species without flinching. He was a patient man who had spent 30 years navigating the complex world of galactic politics. He had smiled through countless insults and swallowed his pride through endless mockery. He had represented humanity faithfully, even when the conquered treated his species with open contempt. Today, he did not have to smile anymore. "We deceived no one," said, his voice carrying clearly through the chamber. "We simply chose not to reveal our full capabilities to species that treated us as inferiors. The conquered dismissed humanity as irrelevant from the moment we made first contact. You allowed them to threaten our colonies without intervention. You expected us to accept our destruction quietly because you believed we had no other choice." Skin flickered more rapidly. "You have upset the balance of power that has maintained peace in this galaxy for thousands of years. Your Titans threaten everyone." "Our Titans have never fired a shot in anger," replied calmly. "They exist because humanity refused to accept extinction as an option. For 300 years, we smiled and nodded while your species carved up the galaxy. We watched as you claimed the best worlds and the richest resources. We accepted our place at the bottom of the hierarchy because we had no power to do otherwise." He paused, looking around the chamber at the assembled representatives. "You gave us no choice but to build our strength in secret. Every time we tried to expand peacefully, we were blocked. Every time we asked for protection, we were ignored. Every time we sought equality, we were laughed at. So we stopped asking. We stopped hoping that the conquered would treat us fairly. And we started preparing for the day when someone would finally push us too far." The representative slammed his armored fist against his console. "You cannot justify building weapons of such destruction. The conquered will not accept this threat to galactic stability." Turned to face him directly. "You sent 12,000 warships to conquer our colonies and enslave our people. You declared your intention to take everything we have built through centuries of hard work and sacrifice. And now you lecture us about threats to stability." He activated a holographic display that showed the 7 Titan-class vessels now positioned at strategic points throughout human space. The images were clear and detailed, giving every representative a good look at the weapons that had humiliated the Dominion. "These ships will never be used for conquest," continued. "Humanity has no interest in building an empire or dominating other species. We only want what we have always wanted: the right to live in peace, the right to develop our worlds without interference, the right to be treated as equals rather than prey." He looked around the chamber once more, meeting the eyes of representatives who had spent centuries dismissing his species as worthless. "The days of humanity being a convenient target are over. We will defend every human world, every colony, every citizen. Any species that threatens us will face the consequences. That is not a threat. It is simply a fact." The council chamber fell into uneasy silence. For the first time, the elder races were looking at humanity not with condescension but with something approaching respect. And beneath that respect, there was fear. Commander Cole watched the broadcast from the Goliath's bridge, standing beside Admiral Carter. The crew had gathered in common areas throughout the ship to witness the historic moment. 2 million humans holding their breath as their ambassador confronted the powers that had ruled the galaxy for. "Do you think they will accept it, sir?" Cole asked quietly. Carter watched the alien representatives conferring in hurried whispers on screen. Some looked angry, some looked frightened. A few seemed almost impressed by humanity's audacity, but none of them looked ready to challenge the species that now commanded planet-sized warships. "They do not have much choice," Carter replied. "We just changed the rules of the game. They can either accept the new reality or start a war they cannot win. On the screen, High Counselor called for order and announced that the Conquered would recess to discuss humanity's new status. The session would resume in 3 days, giving the elder races time to process what had happened and decide how to respond. As the broadcast ended, Carter turned to address his crew. "Whatever happens next, remember why we are here. We did not build these ships to conquer. We built them to survive. Every one of us carries the hopes of humanity on our shoulders. Do not let them down." The crew responded with quiet determination. They understood the weight of their responsibility. The galaxy was watching, and humanity's future depended on what happened in the days ahead. 6 months had passed since the confrontation and the galaxy had settled into an uneasy new equilibrium. The old order that had dominated civilized space for thousands of years was crumbling, replaced by something new and uncertain. Species that had once considered themselves masters of the stars now looked over their shoulders, wondering what other secrets might be hiding in the darkness. The Dominion had formally withdrawn all territorial claims against human colonies within weeks of their humiliating retreat. Grand Admiral had been stripped of his rank and exiled to a distant moon where he would spend the rest of his days in disgrace. The Dominion's leaders signed a non-aggression treaty with humanity that would have been unthinkable just a year earlier. They agreed to respect human borders, pay reparations for the attempted invasion, and recognize humanity as a sovereign power equal to any species in the conquered. Other races followed quickly. The Republic requested trade agreements and scientific exchanges. The Empire proposed mutual defense pacts. Species that had once refused to even acknowledge human ambassadors now competed for their attention and favor. The transformation was so complete that it seemed almost unreal. Admiral John Carter stood in the Memorial Garden aboard Station Erebus, looking at the monument that had been erected in the heart of the facility. It was a simple structure made of black stone, covered with the names of every person who had contributed to the Titan project over the past 2.5 centuries. There were millions of names carved into that stone, representing engineers and scientists, soldiers and civilians, dreamers and builders who had dedicated their lives to a vision they would never see completed. Most of them had died before the Titans ever left the construction yards. They had worked in secret, sacrificed careers and relationships and normal lives, all for a project whose purpose they believed incompletely. They had trusted that future generations would carry on their work, and that one day humanity would stand tall among the stars. Carter reached out and touched one of the names. It belonged to his grandfather, a young engineer who had been recruited to work on the Goliath's power systems nearly a century ago. The old man had died when Carter was just a child, never revealing the true nature of his work. Only now did Carter understand the legacy his family had left him. Secretary Bell joined him at the memorial, carrying 2 glasses of whiskey from Earth. She handed him one and raised her own in a silent toast to those who had come before. They drank together in comfortable silence, letting the moment speak for itself. "The Conquered has formally requested a summit meeting," Bell said eventually. "They want to discuss integrating humanity into the Council as a founding member, equal status with the elder races, full voting rights on all matters of galactic policy." Carter smiled grimly. Amazing how quickly attitudes change when you are no longer weak. "That is the lesson, is it not?" Bell gazed at the stars visible through the observation dome above the garden. "The galaxy does not reward kindness or cooperation or good intentions. It rewards strength. We learned that the hard way during our first contact, when the Conquered looked at us and saw only prey. We spent 3 centuries making sure we would never have to learn that lesson again." She turned to face him directly. "You did good work out there, John. You and your crew. The way you handled the situation, giving them a chance to retreat rather than destroying them outright, that showed the galaxy that humanity is not interested in conquest. We want peace, but we are willing to fight for it." Carter nodded slowly. "We came close to opening fire. When hesitated when it looked like he might try something desperate, Commander Monroe had the weapons primed and ready. If he had given the order to attack, we would have ended them in seconds." "But you did not," Bell replied. "That restraint matters. It shows the other species that we can be trusted with the power we possess." On the Goliath's bridge, Commander Lisa Monroe received a transmission from Earth. The United Nations had voted overwhelmingly to approve the construction of 12 additional Titan-class vessels. The project would take decades to complete, drawing resources from every nation on the planet, but the decision had been unanimous. Humanity would never again rely on just 7 ships to guarantee its survival. Monroe relayed the news to the crew through the ship's communication system. 2 million men and women from every country on Earth, serving together aboard a vessel that had once seemed like an impossible dream. They cheered not for conquest or domination, but for security, for the knowledge that their children and would grow up in a galaxy where humanity could not be bullied or threatened or pushed around. In the medical bay, Dr. Stephen Grant treated a young ensign who had injured himself during a training exercise. The boy was barely 20 years old, part of the new generation that had grown up knowing nothing of the days when humanity cowered before the elder races. "Do you think there will be more fighting, Doctor?" the ensign asked as Grant bandaged his arm. Grant thought about the question carefully before answering. "I hope not. The whole point of building these ships was to prevent fighting, not to start it. But the galaxy is a dangerous place. There will always be someone who thinks they can take what we have built. Our job is to make sure they know better." The ensign nodded, his young face serious. "My grandmother worked on the shield generators for this ship. She died before I was born, but my father told me she believed humanity was destined for greatness. She said we just needed time to prove it." Grant smiled gently. "It sounds like she was a wise woman. I think she would be proud of what her work helped create." Aboard the Goliath's observation deck, Admiral Carter stood alone, watching the stars spread out before him like an infinite canvas of light. The galaxy was vast and full of wonders he had never seen and challenges he could not imagine. But for the first time in 300 years, humanity would face those challenges as equals rather than servants. The Titans held their silent vigil around human space, 7 impossible ships standing guard over everything humanity had built. They were proof that even the smallest species could rise to greatness if they refused to give up. They were a promise that the future would be different from the past. The galaxy had been caught off guard by humanity's secret, but this was only the beginning. The universe was infinite, and humanity was finally ready to explore it without fear. Carter smiled as he watched the stars. Whatever came next, he knew one thing for certain. Humanity would face it together, and humanity would endure.